Welcome to episode 3 of Summer is Coming. I'm your host, Tiny Grimes, and I'm joined by my intrepid co-host, Neil, the Real Deal. Neil,
Woohoo!
why do they call you the Real Deal again?
Because all the deals I make come true. I'm the real deal.
Interesting. I believe we've had a couple of deals that you've shortchanged me on. I just made that up, actually, we haven't. All
Yeah,
right, so how's
because
your Thronesing week been? Play a lot of Thrones this week?
I played a lot more than last week. That is to say, I played some Thrones this week.
Good start.
I played 3 or 4 games last night at our usual game night with other people's decks, as I still am not able to purchase any Game of Thrones 2.0.
Uh-huh. I'm wondering why you just haven't gone on eBay and paid the $500 per copy. I mean, just do it, Neil. Be a man.
That would make me a very poor man if I did that.
That's true. I'll have to check. I,
Yeah.
I might pick up a third one, actually. I've had enough of the proxy. I imagine they're nowhere near 500. If they're about 60, maybe I'll do it. But they might have gone up with with Coruscant not coming in August.
Yeah, I was actually kind of thinking about that, not for 2.0 because I think it would be way too much to pay overpriced for 3 full core sets,
Sure.
but for the next big box of Star Wars cards that came out at Gen Con. But if anyone out there watching this plays Star Wars, you know that the LCG has insane amount of delays, so who knows when that'll come out. I might jump on eBay and see if that's at a reasonable price gouge.
I think that's fair. I don't know if you saw the big news, Neil, but they're at least on the boat. And so if you have a boat and you're into piracy, maybe you could just grab 3 cores. You're like, listen, this is a holdup, but I just want 3 cores of Thrones. That's it. Like, I'm not going to do anything horrible to you people. Just 3 cores. That's it. That's pretty
Yeah,
reasonable.
it's a pretty tempting plan. It's exciting that it's on the boat. As I said to someone else, like that upcoming page is very ambiguous, but on the boat is a better ambiguous than at the printer.
That's true. I'll agree with that one. For myself, I didn't play as much Thrones as I had the week before, but I did play a fair amount. I said I was going to test the Targaryen deck. I feel like I tested it pretty thoroughly. Played a little bit more of the Baratheon Fealty deck. Haven't branched into a bunch of decks I want to, though. What I want to do, Neil, is take
Mm-hmm.
about 3 days straight, just play Thrones for 8 hours, and have a good feeling about some decks. I just don't have that opportunity right now, and it's even harder with, like you said, no one having cores. So I bring 2 decks, and then someone plays my other deck. I know their plot deck. They're usually not the best Thrones player, so quite often I crush them because A, I know everything about their deck, and B, they're inexperienced. It's kind of like, all right, what did I really get out of testing? Not quite as much as I would have liked.
Yeah, it's tricky.
All right, before we get into anything, I'm going to give a brief rundown of what we plan to do today. So we're going to talk about a plot in particular. I'm not going to spoil it yet. We're going to revisit Baratheon pretty quickly. We're going to look at Targaryen. We're going to talk about what we might have in store for next week. So if any of those interest you, stick around. But first, the plot, Neil. I'm going to put up a plot here. And I got to say, this plot's good, don't get me wrong. But I feel like it's bad for the game. Can you guess what plot it is, Neil?
Well, I can because we discussed it yesterday while we were playing
Guess
it.
wrong, Neil.
I think that you are really angry with the plot Surprise Attack.
I'm not, Neil. That is a foolish guess. The plot that bugs me is heads on spikes. I don't know. Why don't you start, Neil? I want to hear if you have any problems with it, and then I'll jump in with my tirade.
Um, I think that this plot is very, very strong because it has good, solid stats overall. Yeah, that's just kind of the almost a little above average baseline of what you want for stats on a plot. And then the ability can maybe like 25% of the time just break your opponent's game if you hit Danny or Melisandre or some huge character that they're really happy to be trying to martial first turn. And then the other 75% of the time, it's still a solid ability to go off.
Yeah. What I hate about the plot is the random aspect, and like you said, it's so flexible, right? Like if it was 2 gold, fine. If it was 3 gold, 2 initiative, even then that's probably fine because you can't really play it as an opener at that point. But at 4 gold, if you want to just take a shot at it, if you're like, oh, they're Targaryen, yeah, you know what? What the hell? I'm gonna run this, especially if they play summon and they go turn one summon. I'll go get Dany, and you're like, well, I'll be first player. You do yours first. Maybe now you have 2 Dannys in your hand or something. Head on spikes, boosh! The game is essentially over if you hit a Dany. Now Mel, it's crippling. Bob, it's crippling. But Dany is almost ball game for a lot of decks that have 3 of each dragon, 3 Dannys, and I don't mind an effect like that. I don't like that it is, like you said, has really good stats and it's so random. It feels like a Hearthstone card, right? It feels like they're like, you know what? Game of Thrones has too much skill in it. We need this one card that's just completely random and screws everything over. And it really bugs me. Like if it said discard the guy and gain 2 power, that would be totally fine. I really don't think it's a good plot for the game. And don't confuse this with, there was people in 1.0 who said like Valor is bad for the game. I hate that my guys die. That's not what it is. It's not that I hate when my Melisandre dies or something. It's that the random element I think is a real problem.
Yeah, what I wish is that this was more like a march to the wall for the hand, where
Yeah.
the other player had to like choose a character from hand, put it in the dead pile, you get 2 power. So that if you
Yeah.
have some chuds in hand, you get to, yeah, you kill them off, they get 2 power, it kind of sucks. But if you're stuck with only Dany in hand, then it
Mm.
really sucks. But there's at least, like you say, not the random element. There's counterplay available rather than just hoping that your opponent doesn't hit the 1 in 7 chance.
I really like that actually. That's a really cool idea so that later in the game it's really effective, right? Like if they only have 2 cards, and it's hard to play around it. So then you're like, well, I want to play this chud to the board for claim soak, but I kind of need it in my hand for plot soak. That would have been a really cool design. That's why they call you the real deal, I believe.
Yeah,
Uh,
if only I was a playtester and had suggested that.
so I believe I saw your name in the rule book as a playtester, Neil. What? You dropped the ball on this one.
No.
I'd say we all dropped the ball on this one, though. I mean,
Yeah.
had I play tested this plot more, I would have been really upset by it then as well. But yeah, so I feel like there's all kinds of fixes, right? You could have discard, like if you pull it randomly, it discards. Like you said, they choose a card to kill. I would even be fine. It was go into their hand, discard any character, get 2 power. That I would be fine with as well because it pulls away. I like your face. It pulls away the random element and the random game over element. Killing, and I think another thing is when I first saw this plot, I thought 1.0 wise, right? Like, well, big deal. They kill a random dude. Who cares? You have like 32 characters in your deck. But as we've seen the meta develop, like we talked about 2 weeks ago, it's like 3 Dannys, 2 Drogos, 2 Jamies, 3 Tyrions. And it's just so destructive to hit one of those first turn, second turn. The game can sometimes just be over.
Yeah, and I mean that definitely is to a certain extent, like you kind of touched on, a symptom of the small single core or just the core set card pool where you're kind of forced into running a lot of dupes. And as we get more cards, maybe it will tone down in such a way that uh, yeah, maybe Danny dies, but you have other cool ways to make use of your dragons and that sort of thing
Yeah.
because the card pool has expanded.
I mean, to be perfectly honest, I think 3 plot cycles from now, this card won't even be played. I think it'll be a relic of a past time. And that's where my problem comes in. Just don't have it in the core set, right? This could be something that gets released later. and then it kind of punishes those decks. Like, okay, oh, you wanted to do some crazy build around deck, like in set in 1.0, like there were a couple of those crazy Viper decks, or like a build a Bob deck, and then it's maybe I pack this because it's a meta card, right? And I need a way to deal with that, and this is a 1 in 7 way to deal with that, and I'm fine. But when every card runs 2s and 3s of, it's a big problem, I think. So that's just a little
That
rant.
makes sense.
I don't know what we can do. I doubt FFG is going to be like, we need to throw an errata down before the cores even hit the street. I just can't see that happening. But man,
No.
I would love it if they did. I love your idea, actually. That's such a cool idea. Um, but
Thanks.
we'll
Yeah.
see.
Well, we'll see what happens with it, and maybe we're just wrong. Maybe it isn't as bad as it seems, and we'll figure out how to kind of counter it.
That's really sweet of you, but we're not wrong. I'm not even saying it's great. I'm saying it's a bad design. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's not even always a great plot. Because it's so hit or miss, right? When it misses,
Right.
it's just kind of like, oh, I didn't really get an effect. I mean, it can be really good
I
if you
mean, it's a
happen to hit
free
something.
intrigue challenge.
Yeah. If you hit something kind of pointless, you're like, well, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on from that. Let's talk a little bit more about Baratheon Fealty. So last week I said I thought Baratheon Fealty was one of the best decks, and you were kind of a naysayer at that point. So I want to ask you, now that we've played some more games, have you changed your tune a little bit, as it were?
Sure. My opinion last week was based on the wealth of experience of playing no games with or against Baratheon Fealty.
Okay.
So this week I got to match up with and against it a few times, and I agree that Baratheon Fealty is one of the strongest decks.
All right. Yeah. I think what's so interesting about the deck to me is that it doesn't really have to do much. And I've realized something I didn't realize before, that one of the absolute keys to the deck is Chamber of the Painted Table. And I looked at this
Hmm.
card before and said, like, okay, I mean, it's fine. We're probably going to win dominance because you have stuff like the Iron Throne. You get a power. And it's not that great, right? That's a 15 turn win that you have lined up here if they don't have any power, and then a 7.5 if they have power. That's not that great. But what ends up happening is, if nothing else, it stalls the hell out of them, right? So you're kneeling half their guys, and they can only win 1 to 2 challenges, and then they can't get any power because they win one challenge unopposed. You're like, yeah, fine, take the military unopposed. I kill a chud. End of turn, I took your power away. You still don't have any power, dude. And they're like, how am I supposed to win this game if I can't get power? So I had a bunch of games that happened like that. I gave somebody this deck so I could test a Targaryen deck. And this person, by turn 3, 0 characters on board, 0 cards in hand. Just a complete decimation. They
Wow.
used the Painted Table and the Iron Throne to stall me out by just putting like 2 or 3 characters out every turn, or because they also had the Red Keep. And so I have to, make sure they didn't win that power, or I had to make sure I won a power challenge so they couldn't replenish their hand. And so I realized after a while, I'm like, wait, what is happening? You're all the way up to 10 power? How is this possible? Next turn, he got to 12. He played heads on spikes. He could have spiked to 14, dropped like a bob, and won the game out of nowhere. Luckily, I was able to hold him off. But that was the true eye-opener for me, where I went, this card is one of the reasons why Baratheon Fealty is so good. It's the stalling mechanic of, I'm going to kneel half your guys, and then you're not even going to get any power.
Yeah. Yeah, they can really slow the game down to a grind, and they'll just win the grind you out.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to more location control and location removal to be able to stop things like this, the Red Keep. It feels like Barra, more than other houses, has these cards that really stall the game out, because the Red Keep stalls the game so much because you have to not let them win power challenges. Because if you give a Barra deck a mitt full of cards, they're gonna whoop you, right? They're gonna get
Yeah.
Bob, Mel, the Neil card. So if you can decimate their hand, you have to keep pressing that advantage. You can't let them draw off the Red Keep. And so I feel like those two cards together, it's really tough to deal with. And I'm thinking to myself, like, oh, I'll just put location control in my decks. I'm like, wait, what location control am I putting in my text? It's like, put to the torch.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, okay, but
Unless you're playing Greyjoy.
right, yeah, exactly. But so if you're not playing Greyjoy and you're not winning military challenges, you're not knocking out these crucial locations, and Bear is just going to grind you into a fine powder.
Yeah.
All right, so we talked about Bear last week. We've now even gone further down that road and said Bear is just like this amazing deck. And again, I'm just going to say it's a great meta deck, right? I'm not going to say it's the best deck. I don't know. I haven't even played half the houses as thoroughly as I'd like. But
Yeah.
I tried to outstand them, right? So my idea was, if Bear's going to kneel you, why don't we just outstand them? And Neil, what are some houses in your mind that we could use to try to outstand the kneel of Vera?
I think that Tyrell has some pretty decent standing effects.
Okay.
And Targ is really the other main house that has a lot of stand.
Yeah, and I think
And Stark has some decent standing.
exactly. So it seems like those three decks are decks we need to really be exploring more. And so this week, I decided to investigate Targ. But before we get there, there's also a plot. I feel like there's a meta plot right now, and that's power behind the throne. There's nothing better than saying, "Oh, you stood my guy. He's up." Now the problem is, unlike heads on spikes, it actually has an offset for its amazing ability, right? You get less gold. You are not winning initiative that turn, which means you're probably going first. So you play your best guy. It's Nelt. But you do have this effect where once per turn you can stand somebody, and I found it to be pretty effective. It's more of a later game plot. You know, you're going maybe 4 or 5 after you get your economy set up. Now, if you get boned and you don't get economy, well, Neil, this plot kind of screws you.
Yeah.
What do you think,
Yeah,
Neil?
it's a good plot, especially to play into their filthy accusations
Yeah, for sure.
turn. Then I mean, the plots sort of cancel each other out in a way. They might have more Neil on top of that, so you might have to figure that out more. But in a way, this plot's even better because you get to save the token until right when you need to stand the character, rather than having to make the choice at the start of the turn who's being knelt from Filthy. You get to wait and see how the marshaling phase progresses.
Mm, definitely. And then, even if you're not playing Baratheon, that's amazing, right? You get
Oh yeah,
multiple attacks with some character. Bob gets to attack twice and kneel 2 people. I mean, the plot is amazing all over. I just feel like right now, this is a 1 of in every deck, and maybe a 2 of in some decks. I have a hard time because the stats are so bad on it, making it a 2 of.
yeah. I feel like you would really have to be playing a lot of economy in your other plots to really be able to afford that. And then it's just your late game plot to try and close stuff out. But maybe that works.
Yeah, I think it'll be a place where we do start experimenting more with that and seeing what we can pull off. Oops, we got all kinds of craziness happening here. So the main house that I wanted to try to crush the soul of Baratheon was Targaryen, and I'm gonna have to admit it did not work as well as I thought it was. Did you think it would work better, Neil?
Um, I thought that it would have a pretty decent matchup against Baratheon because it has a decent amount of stand and it has the burn for characters like Melisandre that you really have to try and find a way to neutralize.
Yeah, I mean it has. So let's just start with the standing. So we're going to take a look at Targaryen now in more depth, and let's start with the standing effect. So we've got. I know this is a weird place to start, but one of the really key cards is Handmaiden, and being able to basically stand Dany after Bera kneels her feels so good. But Neil, she's the only lady in the deck.
Yeah, it is even a little more all in on the Danny Voltron.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I don't think I even once used her to stand Dany, because in those games, often what happened was I was getting beaten down to the point where I had to use her as claim soak. And so
I
it's
used her
interesting.
once to stand Danny. Um, and it was okay for the one turn, and then she was gone.
And then Danny gets knelt again next turn.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So she didn't have quite the impact I had hoped she would. She feels a bit like a win more card for other matchups where Danny's just going bananas and you can keep looping her. She's not bad. She's got 2 icons for 2. So
Yeah.
I think you still use her, but she's not the card that I thought she might be. Now,
Yeah.
the card who is the card who I thought he might be is Magister Lirio. When I had him out, I was in just great shape, especially if I had Tyrion, because this was a Targ Lancer deck. There were a couple games I had him out and Tyrion, and I won every game because it was just ridiculous. I'd be like, I kneel half your board, and you're like, oh, that's great. They're standing back up between him and my plot and the Handmaiden. Good luck with that kneeling. And I wrecked Baratheon twice with that setup, but it feels kind of like Magical Christmas Land, Neil. Like when Magical Christmas Land comes together for almost any deck, it wins, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the question is how many different versions of Magical Christmas Land, I guess, can you build into your deck for each matchup?
Yeah.
Because if you can find multiple versions of like if you get Illyrio and Tyrion, maybe that's one way. If you get Dany and the dragons early enough, maybe that's another way.
Yep.
Yeah, but
But
he's a solid character. Definitely expensive, especially in this new economy. So that if you don't get something like Tyrion to fuel the standing, I could see it being tough for him to really be effective as well as keeping up your board presence.
yeah, and that did end up being the problems in games where I didn't have Tyrion. In one game, I had him and I had plenty of um, locations, and then it was fine. There was another game where I had him, no locations, no Tyrion. I had 2 Dannys in my hand. I could never play them because I didn't have the noble plot. I had geniusly decided to pull that out for some other plot, which didn't work out. But so you're right. It's like there's stuff costs so much that in order to get him to work, it really has to come together well. 2 is very expensive. If it was 1, he would be a god. 2, he's that guy that feels like he's going to be the greatest card ever, and then in practice, half the time you're like, oh god, I have to play a Chud to die, or Illyrio's going to die, and so I
Yeah.
can't do the cool standing shenanigans, and it kind of spins out of control. But theoretically, I love him. All right, so we should probably start with the card that's all based around. What's going on? There we go. Danny.
Yeah, we've already been talking her up this entire episode, I feel like.
She's awesome. I mean, insight. The best part about her is, Neil, how do you deal with every 7-drop in the game? There's one way everyone deals with 7-drops. What is it?
Milk of the Poppy.
And does Milk of the Poppy do much against our beloved Danny?
It's okay against her, but if you have the dragons out, it doesn't really matter that much.
Yeah, and so that's something we should talk about. There was a ruling, and it's a pretty straightforward ruling because Milk of the Poppy says blank the printed text on a card. So when a dragon gives her something like renown or the ability to stand, it's not a printed text. It's just an additional text floating. So it does not get blanked by Milk of the Poppy. So when your opponent says, "What? No way, man! You can't do that!" Point them our way. Minute 17, Tiny Grimes. You can just cite me like that. I'm an authority here. All right. All right.
Mm-hmm.
But she does have insight, and that ability to do -1 to everyone participating in a challenge, it's insane. You know what, Neil? It totally wrecks new players. I feel so bad. Like, I had to
Yeah.
stop people yesterday. And they're like, all right, I'm going to block with these 5 guys so that I can make sure you don't win that power challenge. So I can trigger my red keep. And I'd have to go, all right, listen. They're all 1 lower. You realize that. What? And it's one of those spots where I could just totally take advantage of it and be like, yep, you lose. But it was a test game. But it's so brutal because it's everyone.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do a whole bunch of chump blockers because they just all get reduced. It's really brutal.
Yeah, it's very, very effective, and that's definitely an issue. The whole remembering all of the global effects is something I definitely struggled with when I was starting the game, and I feel like I'm only now sort of getting a handle on. But it's a very tricky ability to use very effectively because it's only while she's standing.
Yeah.
So unless you have tricky ways like handmaidens or seal of the hand to get her into a challenge and then stand her immediately, uh, she's either giving them all -1 or actually contributing her own strength to the challenge.
Sure. But a really nice trick is to do stuff like I'll go second, right? So everyone that attacks you is reduced. Then you do your military first. Then you do the other challenge you don't want Danny in. And then finally, after wrecking their world, Danny's like, I will now kneel. So yeah,
Yeah,
I've certainly done that before, and I've been on the other side. It's extremely frustrating. Danny's one of those cards that is a really frustrating card to deal with because it's just there's not really a way around it. You just have to deal with it, and it's so expensive that it feels dicey, right? It's like wow, they took a huge chance playing Danny because it's not like Bob who can kneel out a dude, right? She doesn't completely neutralize one guy. She just kind of screws with everyone and is really annoying.
yeah. It's also even more key than in the Baratheon matchups that she's just always getting knelt, so that
Yes.
her -1 strength is almost never occurring
Yep.
because yeah, the kneel is just too strong against her specifically.
Yeah, I found in that matchup less and less I actually wanted to play her. Right? I was
Hmm.
like, I mean, I want to play her theoretically, but is she gaining me anything? It's a whole turn to play her, and then they just play Scene in the Flames, pull my other good card, and kneel her. Okay,
Yeah.
that didn't work out very well for me. All right, so let's take a look at the dragons then, since we're on to the next. Ah! All right, let's start with Rhaegal, I guess, since he's here. All right, so all three
Okay.
of the dragons add text to Danny, and this may be the best one.
It may be. I think that it's the second best ability, but the best stats.
Okay. Do you think Renown is the best ability?
I think stealth is the best
Ah,
ability.
okay. Okay, I might
There's
agree with
so
you on that one.
little stealth in the game, but we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah, I really like the fact though that she can stand with insight. And in my deck, of course, I'm running Lannister and Widow's Wail, so you can put Widow's Wail on her, and then wham bam, you got a 7 attack thing that can stand well, only stand once from Rhaegal, and then maybe you stand it with some other effect, and she's doing 3 challenges, drawing 3 cards, and completely destroying them. That's pretty much living the
Sure.
dream, Neil.
Yeah, she would need a third icon, but yeah.
Well, Widow's Wail, man, you just put it on, she gets a military
Widow's Wail
icon.
only gives Joffrey a military icon.
That's a good point. That is an excellent point. All
So
right, way to
we're
wreck
cheating with
my
that, but
whole theory there. All right, so then let's go to Drogon. Drogon giving renown is also really powerful. She's a hard card to kill if she can do multiple challenges and she has renown. It's hard to deal with.
yeah, it's probably my least favorite of the dragons because I think that you can't really do a great rush even if you get this early.
Yeah,
So that it's more of a way to close out the game and doesn't really help you control the board whatsoever.
and his icons are not great.
Yeah.
And then Viserion, your favorite.
Yeah, I think that stealth is super, super important, both so that she can get her insight off and doesn't get shut down by attackers.
Mm-hmm.
So she's kind of always a threat, and even more of a threat on the attack. I also like that it's a 2 cost
Yeah,
dragon rather than the 3 cost.
agreed. All right, so there's a card we have to talk about that I consider to be probably the most annoying card in all of Targ if you're playing the full Danny triumvirate. Uh,
Yeah.
Dracarys. This card is so brutal. The first time I read it, I was like, -4. All the dudes are bigger than that now. I mean, who all is it killing? It doesn't kill Bob, doesn't kill Rob, doesn't kill Tywin. This card is lackluster. And then I played some games, and who does it kill, Neil?
It kills Tyrion. It kills Melisandre. It
Mm-hmm.
kills, I think, Arion.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
it
so.
kills a
Yep.
lot of the really key 4 and 5 cost uniques that are kind of the heart and soul of a lot of decks, at least right now.
Yeah, exactly. It's very interesting that the 7 cost cards have a lot of power, but those 5 cost 4 strength cards seem to be the engines that make these decks work to allow the power cards to do their thing. And
Yeah.
yeah, things like I was playing against somebody yesterday, and they had Tyrion out and they had Littlefinger, and I challenged in such a way where they could block and win, and they wanted to because they had the red keep out, right? And it was a power challenge, and I was
Hmm.
like, I'm gonna set this up. This is super clever, and I had Dracarys in hand, right? And so then he
Yeah.
blocked, and he went, I have an action. I said, nope. I have first action. I'm first player. I have an action. Boom, Dracarys, and he had Whittle's Whittle in hand, and I was like, that's pretty good. So yeah,
Yeah.
Dracarys is just absolutely bonkers good. I was only running 2, and then I was like, what am I doing? I'm 3 for sure. So
Yeah.
terrible proxy went in.
Oh yeah, they're awful. But Dracarys is one of, if not the strongest event. I also want to really quickly touch on how how and why burn is terminal for players who may be a little new to Game of Thrones and the sort of mechanics of how this sort of what we call burn effect, killing a character if its strength is 0, works.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's an effect that keeps checking, you can't save it from dupes or bodyguards or anything because say you save it the one time, the strength is still 0, so it still kills you again, even through those duplicates and the saves. That's what really makes this so strong, is
Yeah.
that they'll think that Melisandre is safe. She has dupes on her. She has a bodyguard.
Yep.
Then one cost and a kneel, and she is toast.
I'm a little bit surprised it doesn't say without attachments. In 1.0, a lot of those heavy burn cards could protect them by having attachments. And so, especially in 2.0, with so much wrapped up into these single characters where you bodyguard them and you put stuff on them, and then it's just all gone as they die
Yeah.
to Dracarys. It's just brutal. And
It's very brutal, but that's kind of Game of Thrones.
for sure. Interesting though, the Greyjoy card that saves. I'm failing on the name now. The event where you get
Risen from the sea.
risen from the sea. Let's say your character has 4 strength, no, 3 strength, and you play risen from the sea, and you go, okay, +1, he's 4, and now I want to play another risen and get him to 5. That doesn't actually work because the first
Yeah.
risen cannot save and attach because the guy doesn't save it. It resolves itself, goes away, and you're still dead. So don't try to do that one either. It seems like it might work, but it absolutely does
Right.
not.
It does it work, however, that you if you're at 4 strength, you get Dracarys, you risen from the sea to put yourself at 5. Does that save?
See, I purposely didn't use that example because I'm not 100% sure either.
I
We'll have to get
was
back to
hoping
you.
to inform the masses.
Yeah, we'll have to get back to you next week on that. I think it does, but I'm not
Yeah, I think it
100%
does.
positive because I think it does, but we'll have to get back to you next week. Thanks, Neil. Thanks for embarrassing me on live TV.
That's why I'm here.
All right, let's move to the 6 drop Khal Drogo. Okay, so we have Imrahal in chat who says yes, it does, and Imrahal is actually the guy that when I'm playing Thrones, he basically has to have his phone by him because it's like this constant barrage of rules questions, and then he has access to all the great minds in the game. So there you go, Imrahal. Props to you. You're the
Mhm.
man. You're my rules guru.
I feel like he has ready copy and paste it anytime he knows you're playing Thrones. Just read the card to solve 90% of your questions.
Neil, that wasn't funny. All right. So Khal Drogo, the 6th drop, is very interesting because I feel like just in a random deck, it's not that great of an effect. Getting extra military challenges in 2.0 is kind of a weird thing. It's like, okay, you got an extra military. You can't spread the board too much because you're going to get wildfired. So you can only have so many guys on the board. Stuff costs a lot. It's hard to get two high quality militaries off, right? You might get one decent one. They say unopposed. They kill a bodyguard. And then you send in a low quality one and it's easily handled. But he does have renown. He has good stats, good icons. And is there a card, Neil, that you can think of that combos ridiculously well with our buddy Khal Drogo?
Calling buddy cops. Calling buddy cops.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the other piece of the combo we had earlier talked about, I think on our first episode, of if you pair House Targaryen with Banner of the Lion and are able to get out Khal Drogo and Jaime Lannister, then our dear friend John Barber has coined this deck the Buddy Cops, where they just go around. Jaime doesn't kneel to attack during either of the military challenges that Drogo enables, and you can just completely wipe their board, especially if you play some two-claim plots.
Yeah, and even if you can't, let's say it's sort of typical 2.0 where the military doesn't dent the board too much. It's still 2 renown if you push through for Jaime, a 3rd one for Khal Drogo. 3 renown a turn, that adds up really, really fast.
Yeah, and killing off some chumps to make their board a little less, or even getting rid of duplicates to scare them.
Yeah.
You know, it definitely will take its toll.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's one of those magical moments, right? Like, are you really going to run 3 of each of them? And then 2 or 3 Tyrions, and then 2 or 3 Dannys? Like, you got to make a cut somewhere. But it is
Yeah, maybe.
But
Khal Drogo's a strong character, definitely.
Yeah. I think I like that idea of Buddy Cop with put to the torch and put to the sword. I think there's a good chance you can pull that off if you're running 3 of each, maybe running a Wildling Horde or something to have another big monster guy. So that may be a deck that I do at some point. We'll see.
Yeah, just gets expensive as any 2.0 combo does.
Oh, yeah. All right, let's see. Who are we down to now? Must be...
It's time for...
We're going to skip to him. This
dude, that's what I was going to say.
Jorah is bonkers. 2 cost. He's got to be the best 2 cost in the game.
Yeah, I think so, easily.
He does have a serious downside. I have never had Jorah live to the end of a game. Not one time. So his renown is almost not renowned, right? It's like fake renown. Like, I got some power on Jorah. Oh, I got to kill him to claim anyway because he's going to die as soon as he blocks the challenge anyway. So I guess I'll go ahead and kill him now. Or if a wildfire comes, who are you going to pick? Tyrion, Dany, or Jorah? It's not that hard of a decision.
Yeah, Jorah is really, really strong, though, for the 3 challenges that he gets to be in. Or more if you use him to just, like, chump block and he doesn't win those challenges.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard for him not to win challenges. He's so awesome.
Yeah. Yeah,
and always wins.
It's not a bad problem to have.
Yeah, it's an interesting problem. And it's important to note that Sacrifice discards him. So if you have a dupe of Jorah, I'd say usually don't dupe him. Keep it in your hand unless it's a situation where you're going to lose intrigue. And then you can be more liberal about the challenges you throw him in. Now you're winning 6 challenges just on the back of this busted 2-drop.
Playing it twice.
Really good.
Yeah, he's very, very good. If you have the chance to put him in your deck because you're playing Targ in any capacity, he's at least 2 copies, maybe 3.
Yeah, it's funny because I can't imagine running a Targ deck without him. He's just 2 costs for 4 strength Bicon is insane. All right, the 4-drop I feel like is a little bit unimpressive. Unsullied is fine. But it's just not that great. Because it has to be in the challenge, the Unsullied is in, that's when they get reduced. It just, I don't know. I mean, it can be a complete blowout sometimes, right? Like if Baratheon's running the Red Keep, and you just kind of go, okay, I got 2 Unsullieds out. I'm gonna attack power. I'm like, well, I mean, all my guys are -2 now. How the hell am I supposed to win?
Yeah, or if you have Dany standing and then you attack with her armies of the Unsullied,
Yeah,
then it's the minus. You're right. The -1 on its own is not very impressive. The stat line not that great. As soon as it starts stacking with other
yeah,
copies or with Dany or
yep,
other effects,
yeah,
yeah, it can be very strong. But I agree on its own, it's acceptable.
yeah. It's okay. I run them 2 or 3, but it's one of these cards that as the card pool matures, I can easily see myself saying either, "Dang, look at all the burn. That -1 is going to be awesome," or I got better characters to choose from. I'm going to cut these guys.
Yeah,
I think we should throw out the card that goes with that, the Plaza of Punishment. This can work
sure.
out really well, right? So if somebody blocks you and they're already -1, now you're killing guys 3 strength, which hits a lot of people. 2 strength, you're pretty much hitting chuds. At 3 strength, you're hitting some reasonable things, um, and so it
Yeah.
becomes a little bit dicier for them to do stuff.
It can be a very strong, at least deterrent to force opponents to overcommit to power challenges for fear of it burning down their characters. It is a little expensive, and I was going to say, keep in mind, people newer to 2.0 timing rules,
Mm,
that the trigger for this is like you were kind of referring to, is still during the challenge.
yeah,
So there are still characters participating if you have Dany standing or the Unsullied attacking. They still have their -1s from those other sources
yeah.
because it's before claim and it's before ending the challenge.
Right, and you can do all kinds of crazy stuff. So you could like you have Danny standing, you have the Unsullied in, you can play Dracarys on something to reduce it, right? Like it looks like they're like, okay, I'm gonna win this challenge. And you're like, not only did you lose the challenge with Tywin, right? He went to 6 because he went in from Danny. He went to 5 because of the Unsullied. It looks like he still wins. Nope. When Dracarys and down to 1, and then bam, Plaza, he's dead. And they're like, I'll save him with my 7 dupes. No, no, he's dead. All the dupes are dead. You just pretty much lost. Now, it's another magical Christmas land kind of deal, right?
Oh
It
yeah.
all has to come together in this glorious moment. But when it does, pretty damn good.
Easy 5 card combo.
Easy. But it does kill a bunch of reasonable things against Baratheon. Baratheon has a number of 2 strength guys that it uses as chuds to protect the big guys. And so I found that it's a pretty good card for sort of chewing through that. You do this first, you kill the little guy, then you do a military challenge. They have to kill a slightly better guy. Suddenly they're on their back foot a little bit. They're going, Mel's getting nervous now. Now Mel only has 1 protector. If you can get rid of that and then march me, I'm pretty much dead here. So I agree though. 3 is pricey, and so I've
Yeah.
always been on the fence with it. I'm like, do I pay the 3 to maybe kill a chump? Like it's only good if you kill 3 or 4 chumps, and so
Mm-hmm.
you're really trying to balance that. How many chumps am I going to kill, and will that even mean anything? Do they haven't has wildfire already happened, and now they've just put out 9 dudes, and I kill one of the chumps, and who cares? So
Yeah.
that's interesting. All right, let's see. Who haven't we talked about here? All right, we'll talk briefly about the Targaryen loyalist, Neil. I think he's a auto include in a Targaryen deck.
Yeah, he's pretty good. We might also want to talk about the other unique character with the same cost and stat line as the Loyalist.
I believe you're talking about one Viserys, the rightful king, Dany the usurper. As someone who loves the Game of Thrones series, I always cheer for the rightful king Viserys. He was a kind and gentle ruler that was screwed over. Do you agree with that assessment, Neil?
I differ on a few specifics, but we'll move past it.
And of course he has a pretty cool ability. Getting rid of attachments in this metagame is really important, whether that be a bodyguard or a milk. Or as Imrahil says, you can milk your own Jorah, right, just to protect that power near the end and still be doing amazing things. Your opponent can get rid of the milk that you put on your own dude.
Now, I have a quick question. In a lot of FFG card games that use the templating that 2.0 has moved to with action, reaction, interrupt, especially in Star Wars and Conquest, you also have things like forced reaction or forced interrupt, which means that things that normally just say reaction or interrupt, you can choose not to do them.
Yeah.
Is that the case with 2.0?
Yeah. I would assume that's the case. I mean, unless it says forced, it's something where you choose to trigger it. So you don't have to get rid of that attachment that's screwing you over. Or sorry, your own attachment. Let's say you only have a bodyguard on your Dany. You're not losing Viserys and being completely screwed. That would be a hilariously bad card. It would actually be pretty befitting of Viserys to be like, it can be good or it can totally screw you as he overreaches as the rightful king.
Now, my understanding is that the one place where that isn't necessarily true is with plots.
Yeah, it seems like plots have to be, because it says when they're revealed, which is interesting because it opens up a whole Pandora's box where if you miss that step, then you missed it. And then it doesn't get triggered. And so it's this whole weird thing because, like, what if you have 100 guys on the board and your opponent has one, and you play Wildfire and you're a total D-bag, and you, like, try to manipulate the situation in which you skip it, and then you're deep into the marshalling phase at that point, and it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa! Wildfire never got triggered, and you're like, oh, well, we're well past that point where that trigger could happen. I'm sorry. So
I think that the more likely and relevant scenario is something like confiscation,
sure,
where that says you have to discard an attachment, and you might end up flipping it when you only have, Widow's Wail on one of your characters or a bodyguard on one of your characters, and you have to discard your own positive attachment.
Yes, and that's happened in a number of games I've played. Not against me, but against opponents, and they always look very sheepish. And they're usually, it's hilarious, because they're like, listen, I didn't have a choice. The other plot was even worse. I'm like, this is fine. I assumed that. I didn't assume you were a complete moron. It's fine. So it's been kind of entertaining. But yeah, and that's another situation where you could easily just, I've seen people that do tricky things like the attachment's almost entirely beneath the card and your opponent doesn't really see it, and you just mosey on down, and then you use your bodyguard, and they're like, wait, didn't you have a confiscation? And you're like, yeah, I guess I did. Yeah, you're right. It totally should have hit my bodyguard, but it didn't. Sorry about that. So be wary of your opponents. So this is just a really important side note, especially since everyone's going to be new to the core set. You're going to be overwhelmed by your own cards. Keep track of every single move your opponent does. They're not cheating you. Everyone's just as new as you, and they're going to do ridiculous things that completely screw you or even themselves without trying to. And I'm not going to name any names, but I had a game yesterday where I played a Dracarys on a Tyrion to kill him, and my opponent paid one and said, I'll cancel that, and threw the card into the discard pile. And I just assumed that it was a hand's judgment. I didn't, like reach over the table and be like, let me see that, and look at it. I was just like, okay, it's a hand's judgment. I'll continue on with my turn. Okay, whoop, whoop. And then at the end of the game, I realized, as he tried to treachery another event, I said, wait, treachery doesn't hit events. And he said, really? Why was he able to cancel your Dracarys then, turn one? I was like, are you kidding me? And so it's a situation where it's clearly his fault for not knowing his card does, but it's also clearly partially my fault for not checking every single thing your opponent does because everyone's new, right? Now, 2 years from now, when everyone is really experienced, you should still be doing that anyway. It's just how you play card games, but it's not quite as relevant on every little detail. But check your opponent's cards very carefully. They may not know how they work. You may not know how they work. I mean, I'm guilty of the same thing. When someone tried to play an event on me, I immediately whipped out my treachery the very first time I played treachery, and they said, that treachery doesn't hit events. And I was like, of course it does. It hits like a million things. I will read it to you now. Oh, no, no, events is not one of the million things it cancels. Okay, my bad.
And that was the first time Tiny read the card.
Yes, definitely. This is how I read treachery. Wall of text, cancel. Sounds good. That's a powerful card. Cancels everything.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled. All right, so let's move on. Who haven't we looked at here? I'm not sure we missed any guys, so we'll go to.
We missed one guy, the Braided Warrior.
Oh, I don't count him. I've actually never used him in a deck. Um, he's just pretty terrible.
He's not great. Eventually, there will be some sort of Dothraki deck, I'm sure,
Yeah,
because it's a cool part of the world, and 1.0 had some strong Dothraki kind of tribal themes. Um, so I'm sure it will see play when those cards come out.
maybe. It's really bad. Even in a Dothraki deck, I look at it and I'm like, unless there aren't a lot of Dothrakis, I'm still not playing this thing.
No, I think it'll be fine in a Dothraki deck because I'm sure that there will be benefits and synergies that either buff your Dothraki or give you bonuses based on how many you have.
Sure.
And so I think because 2 cost is very cheap for 2.0. And so
Yeah.
I think having a Dothraki in that cost bracket will be very helpful for them.
I'll have to agree with you on that one. It's going to be a while, though, before we see it.
Yeah.
The Dothraki C, there's not much to say. If you're playing as your main house Targ, you're running it.
Really? I wouldn't even run it in Targ.
Wait, what?
The Dothraki C?
Oh, I thought it was the reducer. I didn't read it.
No.
Yeah, no. The Dothraki C is terrible.
It's really bad.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to get a braided Dothraki for free, which would only cost you 2 anyway. Yeah, there's just like you said, when the Dothraki deck comes around, it'll probably be good. What kind of surprises me is how did this junk make it into the core? Like, Baratheon has all these amazing locations, and they're like, Targ, we'll give it something that's absolutely worthless and garbage until, sometime later it'll be good. It's like, how about you just give me something good now?
Yeah, I definitely feel like Targ has to suffer a little bit from the way that the books and shows are structured, where the Dothraki are really important
Yeah,
in the first book, in the very beginning of the series.
sure.
And so you have to have some Dothraki cards in the core set,
By the way,
even
our
though they're
apologies for the
pretty
spoiler.
terrible.
In case you haven't seen any of Game of Thrones, there are Dothrakis, and they are important. All right, there you go. Yeah. And then Drogo's Ankh kind of fits into that also. Like, it's only
Yeah.
Dothraki, and you're like, there's all this terrible Dothraki synergy. I don't know.
I mean, this I would maybe run as a one of if you're running Drogo, just because if you do get it on Drogo,
Yeah.
it's pretty sweet.
Oh yeah, and I've seen it happen before. But I always, whenever it happens, I just shake my head and I'm like, why the hell are you running this card? You shouldn't be. I know it looks great right now, but what about the 50 other games where it was just horrible and any other card in the whole card pool would have been better than it?
Yeah.
So
Huh.
it's fine. All right, Fire and Blood. This is a really interesting card. You can do some really cool stuff with the dragons. You can use them as claim soak, bring them back to activate Dany, do all kinds of little tricks. Like, let's say you have it in hand, right? And you're looking at the board and you're like, I can't win a challenge with Dany even with stealth. But you know what I can do? Is if I kill this dragon, then it looks like I don't have stealth, and then they attack with the wrong guy because I can no longer stealth, and then I bring it back and now I have stealth and I'm winning that challenge. I wasn't going to win. So there's all kinds of little tricks you can do.
There's even simple stuff like, say, maybe yesterday you played a game where first turn one of your dragons got hit by heads on spikes.
Yeah.
Was in the dead pile, and the other copy in your hand was just a dead card you can't play. If you get Fire and Blood out, then hey, you get your dragon back. Next turn you get to dupe it, and you're in business.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like this is almost a must-play in the metagame right now where Head on Spikes is so good to stop that, like, I have 2 Dannys in hand, Head on Spikes, ball game. You can at least shuffle one of them back in your deck, and then you can play Dany at some point. Yeah, it doesn't fix the problem of you only had one Danny in your hand and it got pulled, but at least you're not now drawing two more dead cards and raging about head-on spikes for 4 more hours afterwards.
Yeah, Fire and Blood is a really strong event. I would say definitely play it if you're playing Targ, especially if you're playing the dragons.
Yeah, and especially in this metagame, I feel like right
Mm-hmm.
now it's even more important. All right, let's see what else we got here. Almost everything.
I think the last card is Waking the Dragon.
Think so. Waking the Dragon.
How do you
Standard.
I personally have very mixed feelings about this card. It seems really tempting, especially because we've been talking so much about how strong Baratheon Neil is
Mm-hmm.
and getting all of your characters knelt out. You just don't get to do anything. And this is, part of the Targaryen is great at standing.
Yeah.
But the downside is just so much having to return the character to your hand.
There's a couple upsides for sure. Something as simple as Jorah, right? So it can be really,
Sure.
really strong on Jorah. As long as it's not the third counter, you can get multiple challenges with Jorah, bring him back to hand, or even the one after they counter it. And then, so the question that I'm not 100% sure on right now, and I'm actually asking as we're casting here live, in 1.0, end of phase, you could not have
Mm-hmm.
reactions. So you would not have been able to save from this effect. I'm actually not 100% sure in 2.0 if that's the case. Do you happen to know, can you save if you have a dupe of Danny out?
I don't know if you can save or not. One interesting timing question that came up yesterday that we did know the answer for was say your dragon gets hit by Tears of Lys, so it's going to die at the end of the phase. If you are the first player,
Mm-hmm.
then you can Waking the Dragon, your dragon, and choose to return it to your hand before the poison goes off.
Yeah, because first player will decide the ordering of the effects. And so I just heard back from my rulings guy.
Your ruler.
Yeah, my ruler. That apparently in 2.0 you can now save end of phase effects, and so that could be really strong.
Yeah.
You put a Danny with a dupe and a bodyguard, and now she's getting multiple challenges. Khal Drogo getting to do 2 military challenges all on his own. There's a lot of possibilities with Waking the Dragon, and I got to say, I didn't actually use this in my standing Targ deck, which now in retrospect makes me feel
You
awfully foolish. I think this
yeah.
probably goes in it.
Yeah, it would add more standing to it.
The problem is with Targ, with Lannister, with all the neutrals, and it's more neutrals because you need to fit Tears of Lys in there. It's really hard to make this deck work. It's like a 68 to 70 card deck, and it's really hard to figure out what gets cut. So I think I need to kind of use the experience I had with the deck and retool it a little bit and put Waking the Dragon in there and see if maybe with that card it offsets Baratheon. Because we haven't talked about this much, but I said I decided to run Targaryen as a counter to Baratheon. It didn't work. There's too much Neil in
Really.
Baratheon, not enough stand in Targ. And this could be the card that's a bit of the great equalizer.
Yeah, it certainly could be. I played a few matches both with and against Targ, with and against Bera, and most of the time it didn't feel that far off. So maybe this card will be the thing to sort of tip it over into Targaryen's favor. 2.0, most games with just a single course with a most games with just a core set for the card pool will have, to a greater or lesser extent, the issue of whoever gets a better setup will be able to kind of strong arm their opponent out of the game. And I think that this is no different. If you get a great setup with Targaryen, you can handle a Baratheon deck. If you get a great setup with Baratheon, your opponent probably can't handle your deck at all.
I would say Baratheon is the one house, Baratheon Fealty, Neil, that can get away with it because there's so much stall. Like last week, I played against a guy that after turn one had, Tywin, Tyrion, and Cersei out, and then added Littlefinger and Jaime the second turn, and I won without a problem. He never got higher than 3 power, and that just feels ridiculous. And I didn't have that much. But I agree with a lot of other houses. If you can be the one that gets the big dudes out first, if you get the Tywin Tyrion out before they get out the, I don't know, whatever combo they're looking for, you're probably going to win that. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why Baratheon Fealty is so strong. That a lot of those games where it looks like you should lose, due to sort of the randomness of the game, you're able to still pull those out. And that's what attracts me to that house. It's not the best case scenario, because all these decks, because everything is so expensive and they're power characters, all the best case scenarios are bonkers. It's like everyone,
Yeah.
like, oh my god, Buddy Cop's unbeatable. Danny with 7 dragons is unbeatable. But Bear is the one deck that can just be like, I don't have anything, but I got some tricks. And you're like, oh no. All right, I guess I'll try to, and then you just somehow. I feel like it's with smoke and mirrors that you're winning. Like when I win, I'm like, I don't even know how I won that. There's just no way I should have won that. How did I win? And my opponent's like, I don't know. I thought I crushed you, and I have 3 power. It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would agree with that generally. Let's see. We're gonna talk about anything else? Oh, whoa! Actually, Imra has corrected me and says not a bodyguard. That for this one, only a dupe works. Now I'm not sure why that is. It feels very Game of Thrones 1.0-ish, where you're like, listen, logic does not apply to this game. So I'll have to do some research on that one.
My guess is it's probably the wording on bodyguard. It probably says when a character would be killed or discarded, and this is returning to hand rather than killing or discarding.
Yep, I'm sure you're right. Actually, yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Good call. So it's not a lack of logic. I just had to read the card and I don't believe it. So, just kidding. I do believe it. Right. I think it's time.
Guess.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say I think it might be quiz time. Do you have anything else you want to cover?
I always forget that this is something we're going to do.
Oh yeah,
and then we do it.
Yeah. Until basically we are masters of the card pool, which for me is not yet. We're gonna do this, so I have to find a card for you too. I have no idea. Let's see, what should we do here? What hasn't Neil played much of? That's the real question. I know he wants to play Night's Watch, but I don't feel like he's played it as much as he wants to.
Well, I was going to choose a Night's Watch card for you because I know you haven't even considered them at all.
Never will. All right, I got a card for you. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Your card is Like Warm Rain.
Ooh, Like Warm Rain. So this is a Stark card, a Stark event.
It is.
I believe it's 1 cost.
Mm-hmm.
And it is an action, I think. And I don't know the exact text, but it's something along the lines of kneel a direwolf you control when you're defending an intrigue challenge to kill a participating character. And the direwolf, I think, also jumps into the challenge.
You're close. I'll put it up. It's a reaction to losing an intrigue challenge as the defender. And so you kneel a direwolf and kill an attacking character. That is so situational. It's like Drakari's only 1,000 times worse.
I don't know. I have some hopes for that card. I was texting you earlier. I think that it would be, we need to try in the near future a really military-heavy Stark kill deck. That was definitely an archetype in 1.0 where you would just wipe your opponent's board multiple times with your crazy events and huge military challenges. It's definitely not going to be the same in 2.0, but if it's anywhere close, I think Like Warm Rain could be a key component of, I mean, it's a card that says kill on it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I can see this being a great trick card to surprise some opponents. I mean, some of the best characters we keep harping on, like Danny, like Tyrion, like Melisandre, they all have intrigue icons.
They
They all
do.
might be attacking you intrigue.
They
Or if they
might.
aren't, great, then you're not losing as much intrigue.
Yeah, all the better, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. And just to spoil for next week, I think next week we'll end up looking at Stark because I agree, Neil. I think Stark is the next direction to try to look at. I keep saying I'm not saying Baratheon is the best deck. What I'm saying it's the deck of the meta right now. So let's figure out what beats it, and that might be our next option. It's just to kill all the stuff, right? I killed all
Yeah.
your stuff. Now what? I
Try and
played.
kneel me
All right,
now.
I played 2 wildfires. I play a march. I play all these kill events. What you gonna do about it? So it could be interesting. All right,
Yeah.
Neil.
You
You don't have to ask me a card if you don't. If you don't want to make me look foolish, I'm fine with that.
I've got you know what? I was gonna ask you a really hard one. I'll take it a little easy on you.
Appreciate
So how about ranging party?
it. Ranging party. What the hell? You know what? I think I know what ranging party is actually. I
I
think
thought you
ranging
might.
party. Oh, what does it say? It says
So what faction is it?
it's definitely Night's Watch,
Okay.
and it's one of 2 cards, and I can't remember which one it is. It's either the uber cheap one that does something kind of lame. It's either the one where you discard a card to get a gold, or it's the one that gives all Night's Watch characters stealth. And so now I have to decide which one I think it is. I think because it says ranging party,
Mm-hmm.
and the one I'm thinking of only has a picture of one dude, I'm gonna
Yeah.
say it gives all Night's Watch characters stealth, and it's a dude.
No.
Damn it! Was it the other one?
No.
Alrighty then. Let's go with it's a 3 cost,
Nope.
military power,
Yep.
4 strength,
Nope.
3 strength,
Nope.
5 strength.
Yeah.
Is it just blank then at that point?
It's no attachments except weapon.
Okay. Yeah, I did
And
not.
it's an army ranger.
Absolutely did not remember that guy.
And is 4 cost. It's Night's Watch version of the 4 cost army. But rather than some trick like the other ones, like the Unsullied giving -1, it just has 5 strength
Yeah.
instead of 3.
It just makes it hard to beat it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that wraps up another successful episode of Summer is Coming. Stay tuned next week where we will look at other counters to bear. I think probably Stark is in line. We'll look at some other stuff. Maybe Neil will find a plot he just detests. I don't know. We'll see. But we will see you next time on Summer is Coming.